Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from The Federalist. This is dated May 19th, and we're going to get away from the Joe Biden retardation that's been going on and go to something that you may not have even seen in the news anywhere. It says there are Chinese spies at Stanford. Bombshell report reveals CCP student espionage. So this is wonderful, and let's see what it has to say. As the CCP is actively recruiting or coercing Chinese students and scholars at Stanford to serve as non-traditional intelligence assets. Too bad we know it's not working the other way. It'd be pretty easy to spot an American at a university trying to probably do that in China. So this is a great thing here. So you understand wanting to, Trump did it to Harvard just recently from the time I'm recording this, getting no more international students. You might want to look at Stanford now, pal. It says a student newspaper at Stanford University dropped a bombshell report earlier this month revealing there are Chinese spies at Stanford. The report, titled Uncovering Chinese Academic Espionage at Stanford, was published by the Stanford Review, an independent student-run newspaper. This alarming investigation is based on over a dozen interviews conducted between July 2024 and April 2025 involving Stanford faculty members, current and former students, and independent experts specializing in Chinese intelligence operations and technology transfer. Man, sorry. Throat is acting a little weird. We're going to keep going. It says the report highlights three critical findings. First, it exposes that the Chinese Communist Party's, or CCP, Ministry of State Security, or MSS, is actively recruiting or coercing Chinese students and scholars at Stanford to serve as non-traditional intelligence assets. The MSS demands that these individuals gather information that seems valuable. Rather than targeting classified documents, the MSS is focused on obtaining the know-how behind American innovation, which encompasses conclusions from Stanford research projects, methodologies, software, lab workflows, collaborative structures, and even communication channels. The agency is particularly interested in information related to artificial intelligence and robotics. You mean China's trying to steal from us? Surely you jest. Says fears of harassment and losing scholarships. The Stanford report underscores a critical nuance. Not all Chinese students and scholars on campus are engaged in espionage for China. Well, of course not. Not cutting that out. Says, however, those who are often involved operate under vastly different motivations. While some choose to cooperate with the MSS voluntarily, others are unwitting victims of their government, acting out of fear, as highlighted by the Stanford Review. Again, not a surprising thing there either. The reports indicate that some Chinese students feel pressured by MSS handlers in the U.S. who closely monitor their actions. The threat of repercussions, such as harassment of their family members back in China, looms large for these students. Yeah, so that's an obvious consequence of their actions. So, gotta love China. For all you people out there that love communism, this is the kind of thing that happens. It says, moreover, a pervasive fear of losing scholarships supplied by the Chinese government plays a significant role in this dynamic. Yeah, they probably feel like they own you to some degree. As the Stanford Review highlights the China Scholarship Council, or CSC, a leading Chinese government agency that funds between 7 and 18% of Chinese students studying in the United States. Says its sponsorship comes with stringent conditions. I don't doubt it. Students must align their research with state priorities, particularly those outlined in the government's Made in China 2025 Industrial Initiative. Furthermore, scholarship recipients must pass a loyalty test, pledge allegiance to the CCP, and agree to return to China upon completing their studies. In addition, while studying in the U.S., the CSC mandates that sponsored students submit regular situation reports detailing their research to Chinese diplomatic missions, further emphasizing the controlling nature of this scholarship program. These students' family members in China often serve as guarantors of these scholarships, and these guarantors will face financial penalties should their students violate the arrangement or refuse to go back to China. Yeah, that's, I can't imagine being in that situation. So it says extended, wow, throat is just not working right now. Sorry, I've got my eyes kind of on a Cubs game that's on it as well, and they're making a comeback, so I apologize if I kind of stop at kind of weird times here. I got a side eye at the television screen. But I'll do my best here. It says extended period of spying. It says the most concerning revelation of the report is that China's academic espionage at Stanford has persisted for an extended period. Yet, many who are aware of it have chosen to remain silent. Wow, I mean, for some reason, I stopped there. I was looking at the TV. It just made me think, like, wow, really? Like, they're just not, yeah, I guess if they're under all the fear that was mentioned already, yeah, they probably are feeling like they can't do anything. It says the Chinese students hesitate to speak out, knowing they are being monitored by the MSS handlers or fellow Chinese students. And sorry, I'm going to look at the screen again. Was it a home run? Was it a grand slam? Was it? Sorry, I'm getting distracted. And yes, PCA just hit a grand slam that put the Cubs ahead. All right, sorry. I'm recording this on probably not the day you're hearing it, so I apologize I got distracted here. I kind of wanted to like get up and clap and be like, yeah, but we're going to go back to the actual article here. I apologize for my distraction. So it says Americans also tend to remain quiet, fearing accusations of racism, of course, or the potential to undermine the university's financial ties with China. After all, Stanford has received more than $64 million in anonymous donations from China since 2010. These factors explain why most interviewees for the Stanford Review insisted on anonymity. Yeah, I'm sure they're going to, if they were found out, they'd have problems. The China's espionage operations at Stanford are not isolated incidents but part of a broader pattern. U.S. intelligence agencies have warned that American universities are soft targets for China's state-owned or state-sponsored intellectual property theft. A chilling example of this occurred in 2020 when the FBI issued an arrest warrant for Yang Qingye, who didn't disclose her affiliation with the People's Liberation Army, or PLA, on her student visa application. While studying at Boston University, she allegedly continued to work as a PLA lieutenant, completing assignments assigned by PLA officers. Just how to address the problem. At times, the Chinese government recruits individuals who are not Chinese to carry out its agenda at American universities. However, it is undeniable that the majority of the CCP's espionage activities on American college campuses are conducted by Chinese students and scholars. Sorry, now they're replaying the supposed grand slam. I think it hit the post, which is a home run if that's the case. And people in the Cubs bullpen are jumping up and down, and the fans are, so they're reviewing it. Anyway, back to the article. Sorry, being distracted again. This video's going to be longer because of that. So it says, the challenge lies in how the U.S. government and American universities can address this issue without resorting to an identity-based witch hunt. I might have just read that already, but I got distracted, as I said, but we're back to it. It says, to begin with, we must dismantle the prevailing culture of silence on this topic. As noted by the Stanford Review, the status quo of labeling those who discuss this issue as racist must end. Advocacy groups representing Asian Americans, specifically Chinese Americans, should recognize that the only way to genuinely protect innocent individuals of Chinese descent from unfair targeting is to candidly address the CCP's spy activities on campuses. Rather than weaponizing the concept of racism to shut down important conversations, these groups need to take the lead in openly acknowledging that the CCP spying operations present a serious threat to America's technological leadership, innovation, and national security. By fostering an open dialogue, we can tackle this pressing issue constructively and responsibly. It says American universities must take proactive actions as well. Given the higher likelihood of students sponsored by the CCP being compromised, universities should seriously consider halting their acceptance altogether. It's critical for these students to understand that the CCP's pervasive espionage activities create an environment where they are not welcomed in the United States. Moreover, American universities should work hand in hand with the U.S. government to ensure that any student caught engaging in espionage for the CCP faces immediate visa revocation and expulsion. And just so everybody knows, that was ruled a grand slam, and we're back to the article. You weren't. I know you didn't care. So the old adage, sunlight is the best disinfectant, rings true here. The more we expose these activities by reporting and sharing every incident publicly, the more we empower the public to recognize and combat this threat, and the more we deter Chinese students from participating in the CCP's operations. Thus, finally, the Trump administration must maintain a clear perspective on the extensive challenges for the CCP that the CCP presents, which go far beyond mere trade disputes. As highlighted in the Stanford Review report, the nation that develops superior technologies will gain a critical military edge over its adversaries, and China cannot be that nation. No, they cannot. It says, therefore, U.S.-China negotiations should address issues beyond trade, specifically the CCP's espionage operations on American campuses. The Trump administration should firmly refuse any trade agreements until Beijing takes tangible steps to mitigate its aggressive actions on U.S. territory. So, what do you think about that? I mean, that's it's frightening to think that if you were one of these Chinese students, but what do you think? I mean, let me know. I'm sure you haven't heard anything about this in the mainstream media. So let me know in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.